Ricky Nelson made millions and millions of dollars as America's favorite teen star. But guess what? He couldn't even buy tickets to go see a movie. His dad controlled every single penny he made. When Ricky asked his parents for some pocket money to spend, they told him to go collect empty soda bottles and turn them in for coins. Behind the perfect, happy family that everyone saw on TV was a much darker and sadder truth. Contracts that were recently found and discovered show how his own mom and dad trapped him in a deal that took away his childhood and stole all his money and fortune. But that's not even the worst part of the story. New proof and evidence shows what really happened in those last few years before the terrible plane crash that killed him. The real truth will destroy and break everything you ever believed about America's most famous and well-known family. He was born into a script and a life that someone else had already written for him. On May 8, 1940, a baby boy named Eric Hilliard Nelson came into the world in a place called Teaneck, New Jersey. But by the time this little baby could crawl around on his hands and knees, his name had already been practiced and rehearsed through microphones and written into studio contracts for work. His father, whose name was Ozzie Nelson, had already played music and swung through the big band era of music with a conductor's stick in one hand and a big vision and dream in the other hand. His mother, whose name was Harriet Hilliard, had sung songs on vaudeville stages and smiled through film reels and movies long before little Ricky even learned how to stand up on his own 2 feet. Their fame and being famous wasn't the kind that came for a little while and then went away and disappeared. It was built right into living rooms all across America every single week. And by October of 1944, a radio show called The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet had turned their family into the country's very first sitcom royalty and TV stars. The house that Ricky grew up in didn't echo and fill up with bedtime stories being read or the sounds of scraped knees from playing outside. It pulsed and buzzed with rehearsals for the show, lighting checks to make sure everything looked right, and scripts that were marked up with pencil. Even before Ricky went to preschool, his mother Harriet was teaching him how to control his breathing in between singing verses of songs. She never even sent him to regular school at all. Not until she was completely satisfied that he could sing a musical note without his voice cracking or breaking. Ricky didn't ask to become a performer and an entertainer. He was raised and brought up like a product that was being polished and made shiny for a showroom window. He was shaped by his mother's schedule and his father's big ambition and goals. By the time little Ricky was only 4 years old, his name was already printed on call sheets for work. When he was 8 years old, he stepped into the sound booth to replace and take over for the child actor who had been playing him on the family's radio show. Nobody asked if he was ready to do this. That question wasn't part of the plan at all. He was a sickly boy who got sick a lot. He was thin and skinny, quiet and shy, with a chest that wheezed and struggled through the night and skin that didn't seem like it was made for bright cameras. A sickness called asthma kept him stuck in bed way more than playing at recess at school ever would have. He wasn't bold or brave or loud and noisy. He was slow to speak up and talk, always observing and watching the world from behind a wall of studio lights and scripts written by his parents. But in 1949, when Ricky and his older brother David finally played themselves on the radio airwaves, audiences and listeners didn't see the sick kid at all. They heard jokes and funny lines. They heard perfect timing. They heard a little boy who seemed to be turning into a natural performer, even if behind the scenes and backstage, Ricky was just doing exactly what he was told to do. Within just a few months, the show was pulling in and attracting 20 million listeners every single week. Ricky was only 9 years old and he was making $200 for every episode. That amount would be around $400-500 in today's money, but none of it, not even $1, reached his hands. His father Ozzie kept all the money. Every last bit of it. Ricky was given an allowance that was so small it barely covered buying snacks. While other normal kids, his age, were trading baseball cards with their friends, Ricky's father was trading and using his son's fame to buy furniture and property, to pay for vacations and trips, and to make investments. By the time Ricky turned 16 years old, he had $500,000 in his name. That's over $7 million in today's money, but he couldn't touch any of it or spend even one penny. When he turned 18, he was paying 93% of all his income to taxes. One time, just to take a girl he liked to the movies, he had to dig through empty soda bottles to collect them for change and coins. In 1952, the family packed up and moved to Hollywood, California, and the radio show became a television show that people could watch. The living room that you saw on the TV screen wasn't just a set built in a studio. It actually mirrored and looked just like the real one in their actual house. But for Ricky, the shift and change to TV meant even more visibility and people watching him. He was no longer just a voice in the ether and on the radio. He was a face that people could see, a body, a public figure that everyone knew, and he didn't enjoy it at all. He couldn't make real friends, couldn't walk anywhere alone by himself, couldn't be late to the set without his father Ozzy pulling him aside and scolding him. There were no sleepovers at friends' houses, no football games to go watch, no school dances without asking for permission first. Ozzy would tell him very firmly, "The family is your world and your everything." And that was that. End of discussion. Ricky began hiding from everyone, not physically hiding where no one could see him. He couldn't do that, but he started hiding internally and inside himself. The smiling, perfect boy that everyone saw on TV was rarely and almost never the same boy when he was backstage. He battled with anxiety and worry, often excusing himself from shoots to try to catch his breath. He'd panic and freak out before filming commercials. He'd get sick before filming scenes. There were Wheaties cereal ads, magazine covers with his face on them, teenage heartthrob headlines in newspapers. All of them felt like masks that he was wearing and couldn't ever take off. Friends who knew him would later say that he had no idea how to be his real self unless someone told him who that person was supposed to be. By 1955, the show had won Emmy Awards, and Ricky's face was pinned up on bedroom walls all across the entire country. The Adventures of Ozzy and Harriet would run and air for 14 seasons, which was a record at that time. It had 435 episodes in total. It followed and showed Ricky from age 8 all the way to his 20s when he was a young man. It staged and showed his first dates, his first crushes on girls, and his musical awakenings and discoveries. Everything felt real and genuine because it was presented as if it was real life. But when the cameras were off, it was totally different. Ozzy didn't just direct the TV show. He directed and controlled Ricky's entire life. From school to dating girls to money, everything was filtered through a script that was written by someone else, not by Ricky. And Ricky was expected to hit his marks and do exactly what was planned. When his asthma sickness flared up and got bad, producers hid vaporizers with medicine just out of the camera frame where viewers couldn't see them. When he grew tired and exhausted after 12-hour-long shoots that lasted all day, his mother Harriet reminded him that the family's image and reputation came first and was most important. A man named Red Skelton, who was a producer, once called him an odd little kid. But behind that oddness was pure exhaustion and being tired. Harriet admitted years later that Ricky's cheerful, happy demeanor and attitude was often forced and fake. His illnesses and sicknesses weren't pauses or breaks from work. They were inconveniences to be worked around and dealt with. He smiled for the audience watching, and then collapsed when the cameras finally stopped rolling. And still, even through all of this, the money kept flowing and coming in. In 1957 and 1958, Ricky was earning $5 zeros €0 every single week. In today's money, that's over $50 €0 a week. Yet none of it gave him any freedom or independence. Ozzy used all the income to pay for their big Hollywood Hills estate and mansion, the fancy Cadillac cars, the country club memberships. Ricky was given only a $50 allowance to spend. He once admitted and confessed that the only way he could buy something personal for himself was to ask for permission or to sneak away and find loose change. Even when he was in high school, Ricky acted out and rebelled, but not with drugs or wild rebellion like you might think. Instead, he did it with pranks and just not showing up. He failed his English class just to see what would happen if he did. He skipped class to blast records and music, and to sneak off to go see live music concerts. He didn't want trouble or to cause problems. He wanted freedom and to feel free. In music, he found it and discovered that freedom. It was the one place where his parents didn't fully control him and everything he did. When he began recording his own songs and making his own music, it was partly out of curiosity and wonder, and partly out of desperation and need. He wanted a voice that wasn't filtered through a character he had to play. He wanted his real voice to be heard. When Ricky Nelson was just 10 years old, asthma hit him really hard, not just the kind that passed and went away in a few days. This one lingered and stayed, forcing him to stay stuck in bed for weeks and weeks, while other kids his age were outside running around, yelling and playing and living their lives. But Ricky wasn't resting during this time. He was memorizing scripts for the show. His father, Ozzy Nelson, called it preparation for greatness and getting ready for success. Ricky was missing school, missing birthday parties for his friends, missing the whole world around him. But on paper and in the records, he was getting ahead of other kids. The show, The Adventures of Ozzy and Harriet, just kept growing bigger and bigger, and Ricky's role and part kept growing right along with it. Fame and being famous and sickness got blurred together. Illness and being sick didn't stop his work. In fact, it became part of it and part of the job. The pressure and stress didn't let up or go away. And over time, he stopped seeing rest as something for recovery and getting better. It became just another part of the job he had to do. What started as asthma and breathing problems turned into something way bigger. It shaped how he saw his childhood. It told him and taught him that he wasn't a normal kid like everyone else. He was an investment, something his parents put money and time into to get something back. When he was 12 years old, Ricky wanted a bicycle to ride around on. Nothing fancy or expensive, just something simple so he could feel the wind on his face like the other boys in the neighborhood. His parents, Ozzy and Harriet, said no. They didn't say no because of money and not because it was unsafe or dangerous. They said no because it didn't match his image and how people saw him. They didn't want fans or newspaper reporters snapping photos and taking pictures of Ricky looking too ordinary and regular like everyone else. So while his classmates and kids from school pedaled around town on their bikes, Ricky walked everywhere. Sometimes he walked to school, and sometimes he walked to the set where they filmed. That bike, or really the lack of having it, left a bigger mark and impression than they expected it would. It wasn't really about wheels and riding. It was about freedom and being able to do what he wanted. And every step he took while walking reminded him of all the things he couldn't have. The feeling settled deep down inside him. His life wasn't his own. His smile, his style, his schedule, and everything he did, it all belonged to someone else, not to him. At 14 years old, the teasing and making fun of him started at school. Kids at school called him TV Boy as a nickname. At first, it was just joking around and not serious, but Ricky felt it cut through him and hurt. He wasn't one of them or part of their group. He lived in two different worlds. One world had studio lights and scripted laughter that was planned. The other world had locker rooms at school and cafeteria jokes during lunch, and he didn't belong in either one of them. His mother Harriet tried to help him feel better. She arranged bonding moments on the set of the show, and she tried to turn the fake family on TV into something real. But the warmth and love was staged and planned, and Ricky knew it wasn't real. The more they tried to make it feel real, the more it reminded him of what he didn't actually have. The teasing from kids didn't stop, and Ricky withdrew and pulled away. He found more comfort pretending on camera for the show than trying to connect with real people when the cameras were off. He wasn't growing up naturally. He was being built and constructed like something manufactured. By 16 years old, Ricky Nelson had made over $500,000 from his work. If you adjust that to 2024 money, that was about $362 million. But he didn't feel rich at all. His parents gave him just $50 a week to spend. All the rest of the money was locked away where he couldn't touch it. They said it was to protect him from being spoiled and from spending too much, but Ricky didn't feel protected at all. He felt powerless and like he had no control. One night, when he wanted to take a girl he liked to the movies for a date, he didn't even have the cash and money to do it. So he gathered up empty soda bottles, turned them in for coins at the store, and bought the movie tickets that way with the change. He later admitted that it made him feel worthless and like he didn't matter. He was a big star on the TV screen, but in real life, he was just a kid counting nickels and pennies. The gap between who he really was and who people thought he was just kept getting wider and wider. Even the dances were controlled by his parents. Ricky wasn't allowed to go to school parties or casual hangouts with other kids. Ozzy wanted everything chaperoned, meaning an adult had to be there watching. He wanted everything clean, safe, and scripted like the show. So Ricky stood in rooms that were full of strangers, people his parents approved of. He was watched closely, told what to say, and told what not to say. There was no risk of anything going wrong, but there was also no freedom to just be himself. He couldn't stumble through awkward first dates like normal teenagers do. He couldn't whisper dumb jokes to friends. He couldn't just be a teenager. He once said that he felt like a star, but not like a real person. Those years didn't give him memories to look back on. They gave him marketing and publicity for the show. Then, in early 1957, everything shifted and changed. Ricky saw Elvis Presley performing on the Ed Sullivan television show, and it lit something inside him like a fire. He wasn't thinking about the family brand or image. He just wanted to sing his own music. He begged his father Ozzy to help him make it happen. And on March 26, 1957, in a Hollywood recording studio, Ricky recorded 2 songs called I'm Walking and A Teenager's Romance. Both songs were released and put out on April 24th for people to buy. But before they even hit the stores to be sold, Ricky performed them live on his family's TV show. Viewers watched that episode and then raced to stores to buy the records. The songs exploded and became huge hits. A Teenager's Romance hit number 2 on the music charts. I'm Walking reached number 17. Suddenly and all at once, Ricky wasn't just the quiet boy on TV anymore. He was a teen idol, someone teenagers loved and screamed for. The record company called Verve Records didn't last long for him. They clashed and fought with Ozzy over royalties, which is the money you get from selling records, and over control of the music. So by summer of 1957, Ricky signed a new deal with a company called Imperial Records. That contract changed everything in his life. For a teenager to get creative control, meaning he could decide things about his music, was almost unheard of and very rare. But Ricky got to pick his songs, approve the album covers and artwork, and choose the musicians who would play with him. The first single song, called Bebop Baby, came out on October 7th. It sold 750,000 copies before it even hit the stores. Eventually, it passed 1 million copies sold. It climbed all the way up to number 3 on the Billboard chart, and it also reached number 5 on the R&B chart. The song was clean and polished, and it was different from the wild energy of rock and roll stars like Jerry Lee Lewis or Little Richard. Ricky didn't scream or shake around wildly, but he sold millions of records anyway. Imperial Records paired the single with another song called Have I Told You Lately That I Love You, betting on both rock music and sweetness together. The gamble and risk worked really well. Billboard magazine ranked Bebop Baby as the number 42 song for the whole year. His very first album, which was simply titled Ricky, followed shortly after that. It mixed cover songs like Blueberry Hill and Boppin' the Blues with his own hit songs. The album climbed all the way to number 1 on the charts. It stayed in the top 10 for months and months. Ricky was no longer just a TV son on a family show. He was the face of teenage rock and roll music. The blend and mix of television and music turned out to be genius and brilliant. Ozzy didn't stop there with the plan. He wove the songs right into the TV show itself. One episode staged a fake studio recording session of a song called Stood Up, just before the actual record release. That one smart move sent demand soaring and going way up. When the song officially dropped and came out on December 30th, 1957, it hit number 2 on the Billboard chart. It also charted on the R&B and country music lists. That had never really been done before by anyone, a single song crossing that many different types of music charts. Ricky's reach wasn't just wide, it was deep and went into many different groups of listeners. In the summer of 1958, something new was about to change the face of American music forever. Billboard magazine introduced a fresh, brand new chart called the Hot 100, and within just a few weeks, one song climbed faster than anyone expected it would. A song called Poor Little Fool by Ricky Nelson shot up from number 18 all the way to number 1 by August 4th. It stayed there at the top spot for 2 full weeks. It wasn't just leading the Hot 100, but it was also topping the best-selling pop singles chart at the same time. No one had ever done that before in music history. Nelson wasn't just on the radio playing for people. He was on television. He was in teen bedrooms all across the country on posters. By the end of that year, over 2 million records had been sold. Theater managers who were airing and showing his family's TV show found themselves forced to call in police officers just to control the crowd of screaming fans. Letters poured in by the thousands to his studio address. Some girls wrote to him every single day. He wasn't just a pop star anymore. He was the first real teen idol that America had ever seen. A few weeks later, on August 29, 1958, Ricky released something slower and more emotional. A song called Lonesome Town sounded soft, sad, and it was nothing like the rock and roll frenzy and excitement most people expected from a teen heartthrob like him. But it landed like thunder and hit people hard emotionally. The song climbed to number 7 on the Hot 100, and it found itself sitting on the R&B charts too, which was a chart for rhythm and blues music. That didn't happen often for white artists in those years. It had backing vocals by a group called the Jordanaires, the same group that sang with Elvis Presley. People compared it to Elvis's song Love Me Tender. But this one hit differently and in a unique way. Teenagers, especially the heartbroken ones who were sad, said it helped them feel seen and understood. Letters again flooded in from fans. The song didn't just live on records and radio stations. It appeared again and again on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, where Ricky played himself on the show. Many years later, it found a second life in a movie called Pulp Fiction, pulling a whole new generation into its echo of loneliness and sadness. Then came 1959, a year so packed and filled with hits that it barely left space to breathe. Ricky Nelson released 6 singles, 6 different songs that year. Every single one of them entered the top 40 on the music charts. Believe What You Say peaked at number 4. Never Be Anyone Else But You reached number 6. It's Late hit number 9 on the charts. Altogether, his music stayed on the charts for 55 weeks that year. Elvis Presley was away serving in the Army. Ricky took over the spotlight. Concerts and live shows earned him $5,000 per night of performing. His record label didn't want the fire and excitement to cool down. Producers rushed out and released new records almost monthly, month after month. Fan clubs exploded in popularity. Over 9,000 official fan club chapters formed worldwide, all around the world, all for a boy who wasn't even 20 years old yet. His sound bounced between up-tempo rock songs and soft ballads that were slow and emotional. It wasn't just kids buying his records, parents bought them too. He was clean, cut and well groomed. He was safe and not dangerous. He was everywhere you looked. Then something wild and crazy happened. In June of 1959, Nelson played a concert in New York City. Over 10,000 girls showed up to see him. Some had waited for hours just to get in. When he ended his set and finished his last song, the crowd surged forward, screaming, pushing, and running toward the stage. Police officers rushed in. They had to physically pull him from the stage and into a car to get him out safely. Girls banged on the windows of the car, climbed on the sides, and chased it down the street as it drove away. Newspapers the next day called it a riot and said it was dangerous. Other cities started to worry about the same thing happening. Rock shows and concerts began hiring extra security guards. Nelson's record label quietly reduced his public appearances and had him show up in public less. For the first time, teen hysteria and crazy fan behavior became a real public threat and danger. It wouldn't be the last time that pop music would cause mayhem and chaos. That same year, his album called Ricky Sings Again reached number 6 on the album charts. It sold over 1 million copies before the year even ended. A song called Sweeter Than You hit number 9. What set the album apart and made it different was the image that came with it. Ricky never shouted or yelled. He didn't smash guitars on stage. He wore pressed, neat shirts, smiled politely, and performed on national TV in front of his parents. That clean image worked really well. Parents trusted him and felt he was safe. Girls adored him and loved him. Record labels started copying it and trying to build the next safe teen idol. But none of them had that same quiet confidence that Ricky carried, like it was part of his skin and who he was. By 1961, he released a song called Travelin' Man, a song that became something else entirely and huge. It hit number 1 on May 29th and stayed there at the top for 5 straight weeks. Over 6 million copies sold almost instantly and very quickly. The song had started as a demo that was pulled from the trash can. Its B-side song, which is the song on the back of the record, called Hello Mary Lou, hit number 9 in the US and climbed to number 2 in the UK. The album it came from, called Rick is 21, went gold, which means it sold a lot of copies. The public couldn't get enough of him. Sports teams even played Travelin' Man at games and events. It wasn't just a hit song. It was a wave, a global one that spread all over the world. Both sides of the record charted at the same time in multiple countries around the world. It was the kind of double feat and accomplishment that very few artists ever achieved. The year before, in 1960, he had toured Europe. He went to 20 cities, did 50 shows, and performed for 100,000 fans. They packed venues and filled up concert halls across Germany, the UK, and France. Some nights he performed twice in one night. Fans pushed past security guards to try to get close to him. Nelson, who was still a teenager, began to wear out and get exhausted. He looked pale and tired. The pace was brutal and really hard. His father Ozzy booked the tour to keep momentum going and keep the fame alive. The goal was very clear: milk the fame before it faded away and disappeared. But the price of all this was already showing on Ricky's face. In 1962, it got even worse. He released 10 singles, 10 different songs in a single year. That number is staggering and shocking, even for modern stars today with digital studios. He collapsed during a promotional tour in Hawaii, right on stage in front of fans watching. Doctors warned him to slow down and rest, but the shows and concerts kept coming anyway. Ozzy refused to cancel any shows. Fans started to notice something was wrong. He seemed distant and far away. His voice wasn't the same as before. The energy dipped and went down. Something had shifted and changed. And though the spotlight still followed him around, the glow began to dim and fade. In 1963, a record company called Decca Records signed Ricky to a massive, huge 20-year contract worth $1 million. Everyone thought it was a brilliant move and a smart decision. But then the Beatles arrived on the scene in America. The sound of music changed, the style changed, and the audience changed completely. Suddenly, Ricky Nelson's polished image felt old and outdated. His single song called For You still reached number 6 in 1964. But the magic didn't stick around. Decca tried to steer him into folk rock music, and then into country rock music. Nothing recaptured the fire and excitement he once had. The contract that once looked like gold started to feel like chains holding him back. Nelson wanted to grow and change as an artist, but the world had moved on without him. He didn't stop trying, though. In 1961, an album called String Along reached number 23 on the charts. In 1964, his live album called Ricky Nelson in Concert showed off a new sound and style. His band evolved and changed. He brought in serious musicians who were really talented. One of them, a man named James Burton, became a legend in the music world. The band leaned into harmonies, singing together, and country rock textures in the music. It wasn't teen pop music anymore. It was something else, something different, and that something helped shape the future of music. Randy Meisner, who later helped form the famous band The Eagles, played in Ricky's Stone Canyon Band in the early 1970s. Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt, who were also famous singers, drew influence from the same sonic roots and sound. It was called the California Sound, and Ricky helped build it and create it. At just 12 years old, Ricky Nelson stepped into the world of film and movies with a movie called Here Come the Nelsons in 1952. It wasn't just a movie, it was a family affair with everyone involved. The film was shot at General Service Studios, and the film was a natural extension of the show, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. It gave America a charming glimpse into the real-life Nelson household and family. With a modest budget, which means not too much money, and a simple plot about suburban life in the suburbs, the film tapped into post-war American values after World War II, and it quickly became a hit with families. Ricky didn't need a dramatic or serious role to win hearts. Just being himself, the youngest Nelson in the family, was enough to make him a name that everyone remembered. By 1958, he took a sharp turn and change. On a show called General Electric Theater, Ricky played a troubled teen in an episode called The Wishbook. The show was known for its serious tone and dramatic stories, and Ricky showed a new side of himself. He was raw and emotional, not just the kid with a guitar anymore. But the real breakthrough came a year later. In 1959, at only 18 years old, he landed and got the role of Colorado Ryan in a Western movie called Rio Bravo, directed by Howard Hawks. He was standing alongside giants, huge stars like John Wayne and Dean Martin. Everyone had doubts about him. Could a teen idol actually act in a serious Western movie? Hawks thought so, and he was right to believe in him. Ricky's vulnerable, sincere performance turned heads and impressed people. The film earned $4.5 million at the box office, and critics took him seriously for the first time ever. His Golden Globe nomination in 1960 for Most Promising Male Newcomer made it official. Ricky Nelson wasn't just a pop star anymore. He was a rising actor too. The next year, he co-starred with Jack Lemmon in a movie called The Wackiest Ship in the Army, playing a character named Ensign Tommy Red. It was a quirky World War II comedy based on a real ship called the USS Echo. The movie was shot in Hawaii and released in December of 1960. The film made over $3 million and gave Ricky another boost and lift. His charm worked on screen, even if some critics said he was still green and not as experienced compared to his music career. He didn't mind the criticism. For younger audiences, he was the draw and the reason people went to see the movie. He followed that with a movie called Love and Kisses in 1965. It was a project directed by his own father, Ozzie Nelson, and Ricky starred alongside his real-life wife Kristen. The film tried to mix music and acting together. Ricky even promoted it on a music show called Shindig by singing new songs from it. But the film didn't go far or succeed. It was sweet and nice, but it didn't make a dent or have an impact. Still, Hollywood had already made up its mind about him. Ricky was too wholesome and clean for darker, more serious roles. The studios liked him clean, cut, innocent, and safe. He only got 5 film roles outside of his music career, and every attempt to break into edgier, tougher characters was met with rejection and being turned down. He wasn't gritty enough, and he wasn't dangerous enough. And no matter how sincere his performances were on screen, the industry had typecast him, meaning they only saw him as a teen idol, and they couldn't see beyond it or past that image. As the 1960s pushed forward with anti-heroes and raw storytelling in movies, Ricky stayed on the margins and the sidelines. He never got the dramatic chance he deserved and wanted. By the 1970s, the movie roles faded away. He appeared in TV movies like 3 on a Date in 1978, playing a chaperone on a Hawaiian getaway trip. Then he was in High School USA in 1983, where he played a character named Principal Pete Kinney. The charm was still there inside him, but the momentum was gone and lost. These roles were more about keeping him in the public eye, so people would remember him, rather than making a comeback and becoming a big star again. His music had already begun shifting and changing direction. In 1969, Ricky launched a new band called the Stone Canyon Band. It wasn't just another group of musicians. It was a revolution in music. Alongside musicians named Randy Meisner, Tom Brumley, Alan Kemp, and Patrick Shanahan, he dove into country rock music before it became mainstream and popular. Their live album, called In Concert at the Troubadour 1969, captured lightning in a bottle, meaning it was really special and magical. Their cover version of Bob Dylan's song, She Belongs to Me, hit number 33 on the charts. It was Ricky's biggest hit in years. This wasn't nostalgia or looking back at the past. It was reinvention and creating something new. He wasn't leaning on old fame from the past. He was carving a new path and creating a new sound. It was a path that helped pave the way for bands like the Eagles and Poco. He was ahead of his time, but fame is a fickle thing that comes and goes. On October 15, 1971, at an event called Madison Square Garden's Rock and Roll Revival Spectacular, Ricky took the stage wearing bell-bottom pants and a purple velvet shirt. His hair was long, not short like before. His sound was new and different. He opened with a song called Country Honk, which was a country twist on a Rolling Stones song called Honky Tonk Women. The crowd booed loudly and with anger. They wanted to hear Poor Little Fool from years ago. They wanted 1950s Ricky, not this new version. He was stunned and shocked. He finished one more song, and then he left the stage. The backlash and negative reaction haunted him and stuck with him. But from that bruising and painful moment came a new song called Garden Party. The 1972 single reached number 6 on the charts and carried a message he'd never forget. The message was this: You can't please everyone, so you've got to please yourself. Despite the success of that moment and that song, the music industry had moved on from him. His 1970 album, called Rick Sings Nelson, vanished and disappeared after Decca Records folded and went out of business. In 1981, an album called Playing to Win came out under a new record company